for coming to our Healthy Community Forum. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us this evening to talk about a very interesting and important issue of poverty and food security. This evening, we hope to learn more about what is happening regionally to address poverty and food security, discuss the realities of poverty and food security in our community, learn about community gardens as a potential solution, and share resources and find ways to take action. We have the advisory community members seated around the tables, and we're all wearing a name tag looking like this. So if you have questions, suggestions, there is Diva Joy over there.
And I have the smallest name tag.
Yeah, the biggest diva, the smallest name tag. The recap of our June 5th forum. We had almost 50 people in attendance. It was a very good discussion. So we had meaningful dialogue occurred on issues of poverty and food security within our community. And the entire event was filmed by Rogers TV, and I think they viewed it 3 weeks ago, right, on a program called The Podium. And yeah, it was broadcast on The Podium. After a warm-up activity that encouraged attendants to get to know each other, we heard from Adoma Patterson, advisor of the Peel Poverty Reduction Strategy. And she spoke on issues such as precarious employment and shared a presentation that the Food Security Task Force had compiled. Our second speaker was Councillor Chris Fonseca of Ward 3, who commented on the need for such a forum and shared innovative examples of addressing poverty and food security from other municipalities. Councillor Fonseca also pointed to the need for all levels of government to be engaged in actions to address poverty and food security. At their tables, community members shared great insights about issues present as they had observed or experienced firsthand. So, some of the issues that was shared: lack of information, children going to school hungry, transportation issue for those working night shifts, like for example people who work late shifts and they have to get home at hours of the night, and if the bus is not running and they can't afford to take a cab. We also heard a lot from people who receive food at food bank that things are expired and that some of the food is not healthy. Well, we know because the food bank hands out what they receive, and most of the times canned food and a lot of carbohydrates. And we also know that all this, like, is mental health, housing, the lack of housing is all tied to poverty. We know that for a fact, it's all tied to poverty. And that there need to be more public discussion. There's not enough going on, like forums like these. What needs to be done? So we need to stimulate more information. We need more forums like we're trying to achieve right now. People need to learn or be taught how to grow their own food. There needs to be more awareness on poverty and food security. You know, a lot of times when we talk about poverty and food security, people will ask what that is. So what the advisory committee has been doing is trying to break it down in discussions to see what it really is. Because when we use the term, someone who don't have enough food, they'll say, okay, yeah, I don't have enough food. But if you tell them it's food security, then they'll say, huh? So for people who work in organizations, I'm trying to make you aware, to be very conscious of the conversations that we're having with people who come in to ask for food or to talk about food security, that we're not letting such an important conversation go over their head, and show them how it's all connected to poverty. Leaders need to speak up. We need to be building more community gardens. There's an interest in community gardens. We want to build more involvement with local politicians and local politics. We have an election in a few days. There needs to be more access to health care, and there need to be actions over these discussions and decisions. Like, we don't just want to have to be talking, and then there's no actions following behind it. What is being done? So we know that some local churches are running soup kitchens or serving food to local people. We know that the food bank is providing food. And we also found out that Active Assist, the area of the city of Mississauga, also have information, right, on.
That was just one example. Sorry, I'll tell
Yes.
you that. So one of the folks at the tables gave this example of Active Assist, with which some other people hadn't necessarily heard of, to give low-income people a chance to access recreational and cultural services in the city of Mississauga. So if we all don't know about that, this might be a good chance for us to learn a little bit more about that program and see where we can spread the word.
Yes. Okay. Pass on the information to the friends. And we also know that at Christmas time, more people hand food out, but we also have to remember that after Christmas, people are still hungry. And there's not enough. There's not enough of anything. There's not enough food. There's not enough information. There's just not enough. Okay. So I'll invite Deb to come and share with you a little bit about who we are and why we're doing what we're doing.
The agenda for this evening is to give you a recap of the June forum. We'll share information about the East Mississauga Community Healthcare Center for those people who weren't with us last time and don't know about us. We have two presentations this evening by Paula and Anita. There will be a group discussion and dialogue and a report back. So again, those of you who joined us in June, that'll be familiar format for you. We'll allow some time towards the end for people needed announcements, so we can open up the floor and let people connect with each other, and then we'll move on to sort of where to from here, what next. East Mississauga Community Healthcare Center was the first community healthcare center in Peel Region. We opened our doors at 2555 Dixie Road, Unit 7, which is at the southeast corner of Dixie and Dundas in 2008, and provide a unique model of health and well-being that focuses on the individual as a whole and within the broader community. We have an interprofessional team of professionals, for example, doctors and social workers who are working together with dietitians who are also running seniors groups, all under the same roof. There's a wide range of programs and services at East Mississauga Community Healthcare Center, including clinic, dental groups, foot care, diabetes education, and lots more. Our priority populations are isolated seniors, immigrants and refugees, the LGBTQIA2S community, racialized individuals in communities, and people living in poverty. And obviously, what brings us here today is the fact that poverty is this overarching. So throughout the East Mississauga Community Healthcare Center, this is a theme that clearly we're seeing in all of the programming and getting feedback from our community on. So why poverty and food security, and why us? The advisory committee, who you've met this evening, members represent people from our community, groups and organizations who work and live in the community. And poverty and food security is a serious issue, that, like I said, that we're hearing about from our own community and constituents, and we wish to address this as a group. Our goal, obviously, is a healthier community, and that fits well into our vision, mission statements, right? This is why we're here. About the advisory committee, represents and promotes the East Mississauga Community Healthcare and advocates for issues that reflect the needs and priorities of our East Mississauga community. We report to and are accountable to the LAMP Board of Directors, TOFICO, which is our sort of parent umbrella, and we are a satellite to them. And the current membership includes, like I said, residents, the Dixie Bloor Neighborhood Center, City of Mississauga, Transform Nation, and the Brian Fleming Public School. Our activities are building connections with staff, We organized a staff advisory retreat. We have played a key role at the dental clinic launch. We focused, our priority focused on poverty and food security, hence the forums, and organizing a series of healthy community forums, of which this is our second. We have, yeah. I would like to, we are going to have two presentations tonight, and I would like to introduce Paula DeCoit from the Peel Poverty Action Group. She will give us a presentation, and then following that, and another, we'll have some time for some questions at the end. Paula?
And I begin by talking first about a bit about the facts, and then a little bit about PPAG, and of course some information on food security. But I think this evening I'll be talking more about the poverty side of it. And after hearing what went on in June, I don't think, quite frankly, I have much to add, because I know the work of Adoma Patterson is quite substantive. I think if I add any value this evening, is going to be via the questions I'm going to be asking you to consider. I know you have questions that you have to discuss later, but I just want to pose some questions to you to think about as we go about our work dealing with poverty and food security. And for those of you in the room who are into the power of words, I want to acknowledge that yes, we are using the language of problems and not a language of solutions, but we have to start somewhere. So again, to those of you who are in the power of words, just park that for a moment, and let's just use words like poverty and food security is quite a positive term. Okay, so these are the facts and figures, and you were shown these in June. Approximately 13% of the people in Peel are living below the poverty line. In Mississauga it's actually about 13.6%, and in Brandon it's about 12.6%. In 2011, we had almost 9,000 children under the age of 6 living in poverty. In Brampton, it was closer to like 7,500. Now it's 2014, so those numbers, have gone up. And you can see that almost a third of people are spending more than 30% of their income, on housing, which doesn't leave much money, for paying the utilities and the car payment and the insurance, and the most important thing, food. We also have, as you know, these are facts and figures that we know. So just to refresh, our memory, about those. The next slide. I don't know why that is there, but let's go to the next slide. Okay. So some of the issues and objectives linked to having such a high degree of poverty. Again, as someone said, poverty is the overarching issue. So of course, housing, lack of good food, income security, economic opportunities, all of these things are impacted when you've got a society that produces poverty. Now, in Peel, we have got what I call community infrastructure for addressing poverty. We're all in the business. I would say, I put it to you that the nonprofit sector in Canada, indeed in the whole Western, I would say in the whole world, is primarily concerned with the whole issue of inequality, of injustice, and with poverty. And we have all these agencies and organizations working on it, so we're all in the business, of reducing and eliminating poverty. But more specifically, right here in Peel, we've got two distinct organizations focused specifically on this issue. And you have been made aware of the Peel Poverty Reduction Strategy Group, headed by staff from the region of Peel. Next slide. And they are linked strongly to the work being led now by Minister Deb Matthews on Ontario's strategies to reduce poverty. And their membership is quite impressive. It's being headed up by our Commissioner of Human Services, Janet Maynard. And their membership is comprised primarily of professional social workers, community workers from community agencies. And it's a well-resourced group, a well-led group, and that is part of our infrastructure for addressing poverty here in Peel, especially along policy lines and input in policy development and program development and raising public awareness. And they're doing more than talk. They actually, as you probably are aware, I'm sure I mentioned that they're working towards a food charter, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So these are the facts and figures, and you were shown these in June. Approximately 13% of the people in Peel are living below the poverty line. In Mississauga, it's actually about 13.6%, and in Brampton, it's about 12.6%. In 2011, we had almost 9,000 children under the age of 6 living in poverty. In Brampton, it was closer to like 7,500. Now it's 2014, so those numbers, have gone up. And you can see that almost a third of people are spending more than 30% of their income, on housing, which doesn't leave much money, for paying the utilities and the car payment and the insurance, and the most important thing, food. Ask, what do we mean by food security? And doing a little bit of research, I found this definition here. And I'll just read it out for emphasis. Ensuring that all people at all times have physical and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food to meet their dietary needs and preferences for an active and healthy life. So when we're talking about food security, that's what we're talking about. I'm sure there are other definitions, but that's the one I'm using. Now, I take the position, and PPAC takes the position, that access to food doesn't come from a company, it doesn't come from you or me. Food comes from Gaia, food comes from Mother Earth. And that food does not come with a title deed, or any kind of property, or any kind of ownership bill. So we have taken the position that access to food, which is provided only by the earth, with the help of the sun and the other, bodies, is a basic and fundamental right of all living beings, not just humans, all living beings. And then, of course, we kind of brought it down. Access to sufficient good food is a basic human right. This is a non-negotiable. This is why, while I applaud our efforts at various we have to do something. But I think sometimes we have to look at the spectrum of our actions. We still have to deal right now with food insecurity, but at the same time, let's not forget how basic what a basic injustice it is that people are going hungry, and people will die just because they don't have money to buy food. Life comes first.
Thank you for inviting me here, and thank you so much to Paula and everyone for sharing. I know there's some harsh realities that we're all looking at right now. If I can start, I just want to start with a personal anecdote, if I may. I'm a community gardener myself. I live in West Toronto. I'm part of the community garden there. A number of our community gardens are food insecure, they're hungry, they have precarious housing situations, they face so many different barriers of economic barriers, language barriers, and so forth. And I think what really kind of pushed me towards this kind of work is just seeing what positioning a community garden as a community space can do for community, not just for individual health, because what I'm seeing is that the gardeners are not having to choose between rent and fresh food because they're able to grow it. But what I saw that was even more surprising and more significant to me, I think, is just an enormous amount of pride and dignity in that process and sharing that knowledge and having a space where that knowledge was valued. And it sounds little, like I'm having a bumper year of cucumbers or something like that, or sharing the medicinal value of milk thistle. They sound like little things, but I think community gardens really create a space for those that kind of pride and dignity, and that does a whole lot of good to address food security for those individuals, but also for the community as well. So hopefully I can be bright and bring some other insights to this conversation. So just to start off and talk a little bit about EcoSource, we're an environmental organization based here in Mississauga. We do programming all over the region of Peel, and we specialize in fun, hands-on programming, looking to change the habits of everyday citizens to become better environmental citizens. So we do a lot of different kinds of work. The work that we're here to talk about today is in community gardening. We did open the first community garden in the city of Mississauga in 2006 at Garden of the Valley. And since then, we've slowly kind of built the community garden model in Mississauga with 4 community gardens and 2 large-scale urban agriculture spaces. So the 4 community gardens, we have 1 in the Malton area, 1 in the Clarkson neighborhood, and 2 in central Mississauga. These community gardens are largely member-based, so they're places where individuals who have no access to land to grow their own food, no backyards, maybe they live in apartments, are able to access a space to grow food for themselves and for their families. In addition, the community gardens also have demonstration plots for some of the environmental benefits of growing sustainably and organically. So maybe a pollinator garden to kind of talk about biodiversity and the importance of protecting our bees and butterflies and so forth. These member gardens also have community plots. These are spaces where we invite students, where we invite community members to come and learn more about growing fresh food for themselves. And all the produce from the community plots are donated to local food banks. Our pilot site, or our primary site for our urban agriculture is the Iceland Teaching Garden. Does anybody know the Hershey Sports Zone, which is in central Mississauga? So I don't know if you've ever kind of taken the path down behind the ice rink there, but there's a beautiful naturalized park, and that's the site of our Iceland Teaching Garden. So it's a 15,000 square foot teaching garden, and again, a space for us to engage Mississauga residents of all ages and places to learn more about growing food for themselves. And really this was started because we wanted to start addressing food security in Mississauga on a larger scale. And so in partnership with the Eden Community Food Bank, all of the produce from the Iceland Teaching Garden goes to the food bank clients at Eden. Just to add to that, because we're kind of able to have a presence at Eden and get to know people through outreach and day in, day out, through the drop-in and client hours, we're able to kind of talk about the needs that are there, and through this kind of feedback, we were able to kind of grow specifically, understand what's missing in the food bank, and a lot of that has been kind of addressed in previous slides about, fresh food going off and not enough access to certain fruits and vegetables, and really cater it to what we know the food bank clients need, and so we're able to do that. Okay, so why are we talking about community gardens? There has been a lot of academic research done of obviously the environmental health benefits, or the environmental benefits of community gardening, but also the impacts on human health. So I don't want to run through this in a lot of detail, but what we know about it is definitely that it increases people's physical activity levels. It does a lot for people's mental and emotional health, and obviously for the purposes of this conversation, it does improve the access to healthy food and better nutrition. So we wanted to take all this academic data and really kind of turn it back onto our own community. So we wanted to know what Mississauga residents thought about this. So we turned the question back to our community gardeners and asked, how do our gardens help us grow? And we came up with a number of different impacts that were found from that study. So one, we know that the presence of community gardens has a really positive impact in our public spaces. They engender a lot of positive foot traffic in the spaces and make people feel more welcome. Definitely we know that it increases levels of physical activity. Something that the gardeners really expressed was that it was a space for people to share information, so that knowledge sharing piece that came out. And also to learn more about processes of nature. Not just in terms of food growing, but we were able to kind of engage gardeners who may be interested in different things, so garden beautification. And what we've actually found is when we engage students in this kind of activity, when they walk by that public park, they're able to kind of say, hey, that's something that I contributed to, those are, I made that, and that's a really kind of piece of an ownership from our young people as well. So already in 2014, we've had a number of huge impacts over 4,500 volunteer hours, so members of all different kinds of people coming out from Mississauga to help grow food for local food banks. And 3,700, if you just want to actually scroll through as well, there's just a number of photos. We have had over 3,700 program participants. So these are educational opportunities where kids as little as 4 and seniors are able to kind of really get their hands dirty and understand the process of growing fresh and sustainable food. I've had a number of students come and little kids just come out and you know, being able to identify a plant for the first time and associate it with something on their dinner table and take that excitement home. So our partnership basically aims to have expanded or new public community gardens through the city of Mississauga, and also to support neighborhood food garden projects each year. And in addition to that, to really build the skills of our community for fresh food growing through school and community-based garden education programs. I do have an update about Bloor-Dixie, this neighborhood in particular. Bloor-Dixie has been a neighborhood that's been identified as a potential for a new community garden site. There is an extensive rubric that the city planning department kind of goes through to identify suitable sites for community gardens, and so the parks planning process, you know, with the upcoming election just has taken a little longer than expected. But I am happy to be here today just to kind of gain a little more feedback from residents on the ideas of community gardens. Okay, so just to kind of talk about individual action, I think one of the things that we can kind of do if you are interested in kind of addressing food security through growing locally is to kind of volunteer at one of the community gardens and to kind of work together to build your own knowledge about food growing and help to grow food for local food banks. I'm sure there's a lot of knowledge in the room, and it always surprises me when I come out to workshops how much knowledge already exists in the room about people's food cultures, food growing, and so forth. And so another kind of action item would be to kind of take that knowledge and spread it around. I think another item would be just to actually let your local councillor know if this is something that you are interested in. We have kind of had some talks with Councillor Fonseca, but it is really important that as residents who are using the democratic process to really kind of make your voice heard and keep those issues front of mind for our councillors. And certainly to let us know, as I said, I'm kind of here to collect more feedback from the residents in Bloor-Dixie, but feel free to write to us as well. And then finally, just finding like-minded people in your community who might be interested in seeing community gardens as like a contribution to the community, as something that might be of interest. Because community gardens don't necessarily need to be in a public park. Maybe it's about kind of looking at church land or schools that are interested. Or maybe you're finding that, you know, balcony gardening is more relevant, so maybe it's about having a big balcony gardening project. So just kind of asking around and kind of finding your own networks and then kind of building something from that would be useful. And just to learn more about EcoSource, there's you can find us at ecosource.ca, and there's a list of events in terms of volunteer opportunities and all sorts of opportunities for getting involved.